Hi everybody, welcome to class this week. We're going to continue on with our look at Rob Preece's great book, Psychology of Buddhist Tantra. So today's class, again, I always say it might be a little shorter, but it's just it's a bit of a longer chapter, and I really encourage everybody to read it, called Liberation Clarity. And for the most part, it's his presentation of Mahamudra, or mindfulness of the mind, sort of unity of shamatha and vipassana. So I highly recommend this chapter in particular, and it is the first chapter in his part 3 of the book, called The Process. So it's sort of like the foundational teachings and techniques that we look at to be able to build our tantric practice. Okay, so before we go into that, let's just do our Heart Sutra and a few prayers and a quick meditation here. Homage to perfection, wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I have heard at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgir in Masvaltra's mountain, to the great assembly of monks and nuns and the great assembly of bodhisattvas. That time the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. That time also Spirit Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, was looking perfectly at the prize of profound perfection, wisdom, and perfectly also at the 5 aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Then the Power Buddha Venerable Shariputra said to Spirit Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, how should a son of the lineage trained who wishes to engage the prize of profound perfection wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Spirit Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage the prize of profound perfection wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly, also the 5 aggregates being empty inherent existence, form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form is none other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, having no characteristics. They are not produced and do not cease. They have no defilement, no separation from defilement. They have no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tactile object, no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so forth, up to a mentality element, also up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so forth, up to no aging and death, no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, there is no suffering, origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear. Passing utterly beyond perversity, they attain the final nirvana. Also, all Buddhas reside perfectly 3 times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, making manifest complete Buddhism state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the equal to the unequal mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it's not false, should be known as the truth. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed, Tayata Gata Gata Paragata Parasamgati Bodhisoha. Shariputra, Bodhisattva, great being, should train the profound perfection of wisdom like this. Then the Blessed One arose in that concentration and said to Spirit Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, that had spoken well. Good, O son of the lineage, it is like that. Since it is like that, just as you have revealed, in that way the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, Spirit Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, and spirits, were delighted and highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed One. Okay, so now just looking at our prayers here, opening prayers. Let's visualize ourselves seated in a wide open space, surrounded by all sentient beings. We have a beautiful, so the ground's like blue, like lapis lazuli, very soft and comfortable to sit on. And we have a beautiful dome of a blue sky above us, no clouds and luminous, and ourselves surrounded by all sentient beings of the many realms of samsara. So we can feel that our mother is on our left, father on our right, people we love the most behind us as support, and people we like the least or have issues with in front of us as objects of our compassion. So we can feel that people from all over the world are here with us, meditating and healing together. Animals and all sort of natural beings from the natural ecosystem here, insects, mammals, fish and birds and so forth. All of Mother Earth here. Spirit beings from the spirit world, elemental planes, astral and ethereal planes and so forth. Celestial beings, all the gods and goddesses, demigods, demigoddesses, all these sort of higher spiritual beings here with us, and countless beings of lower states of rebirth, hungry ghost beings and hell beings and so forth. So a huge crowd of beings here, all of us meditating here together. And above us in the sky, like a beautiful blue sun, beautiful luminous blue light, is Buddha Shakyamuni's higher Sambhogakaya form, Conqueror Vajradhara. So he's like a big blue diamond or a blue sapphire in the sky. He's seated in lotus position with his two hands crossed at his chest, a bell at his left hand, and diamond scepter Vajra in his right, with a crown, silk garments, and jewels, and so forth. Very, very beautiful. And at his heart, on a sun disk, we can visualize a hum letter, H-U-M. He is the embodiment or synthesis of the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, all of our teachers, all of our gurus, and all holy beings, all light beings, all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yidams, Dakinis, Arhats, and so forth. So taking refuge and generating bodhicitta from our hearts here, and all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the virtues we collect by giving and other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. I know all sentient beings, and to achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the virtues we collect by giving and other perfections, may we become Buddha for the benefit of all. I know all sentient beings, to achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Now, four measurable minds here of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. May everyone be happy. May everyone be free from misery. May no one ever be separated from their happiness. May everyone have equanimity, free from hatred and attachment. Now, 7-limb practice to make our meditation here, practice Buddhist. With my body, speech, and mind, humbly I prostrate and make offerings both sit out and imagine. I have blessed my wrong deeds from all time and rejoice in the virtues of all. Please stay until samsara ceases and turn the wheel of Dharma for us. I dedicate all virtues to great enlightenment. Now, holding beautiful purified universe at our heart here for the mandala offering, once more opening our hearts with generosity to the merit field, to Vajradhara, asking for his blessings and teachings here. So the most beautiful things in the world, pure and beautiful, held at our heart and offered up to all the Buddhas here. The ground sprinkled with perfume and spread with flowers. The grey mountain, four lands, sun and moon, seen as a Buddha land and offer thus. May all beings enjoy such pure lands. We send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious teachers. Om Manam Guru Radha Mandala Kamirti. And we request just from our hearts, Conqueror Vajra, please grant us your blessing. So just to start here, a wonderful, beautiful blue light is coming from his heart. Soft blue light. So we can feel here in Canada in the wintertime around Christmas, it's very cold, especially where I live here in Nelson in the mountains. Very, very dark and cold. And Christmas time, you have the snow out. And what I like is to see all the Christmas lights people put outside their house. And my favorite ones, always since I was a little boy, are the blue lights. So sort of a dark night, and you have sort of these beautiful blue lights. It's sort of a blue glow. So we can almost feel that, just sort of beautiful blue light coming down here, and energy and nectar. Us and all sentient beings, purifying us and energizing us here, giving us spiritual power. Please grant us your blessings of body, speech, and mind. Conquer Vajradhara, all of our Buddhas and teachers and so forth. Again, please grant us your blessings. So with that, we can just feel that Vajradhara gets really, really small. It's like a little piece of lapis or a little diamond. It's like shooting star, comes slowly down to the crown of our head, enters our crown chakra, and then descends just in front of our spine here, into our heart. And once it's at our heart, he dissolves into our mind here. Grant us all his blessings. Just feel that all the love, compassion, and wisdom and power go directly into us. And his omniscient Buddha mind and liberated Buddha mind becomes one with ours. And we just take a moment here just to sit in this clarity and peace and space. Okay, so just coming out of meditation now. Let's really feel the blessings of all the Buddhas in our hearts. Okay, just a little meditation and just a little practice here just to sort of get us started and get us blessed and sort of set the tone for our class here. So again, this is a class on Mahamudra, or again, meditation upon the ultimate nature of the mind. So here's the thing is that I actually have another course on here on my channel sort of that I taught on Mahamudra maybe a couple years ago now or something. I can't remember when it was, but you can look and probably the details you'd sort of want to look at are in that class there. A number of sort of episodes that you can watch. And again, this is just an absolutely enormous topic to go over. So I just basically wanted to make a few points here, just insofar as it can carry a discussion in Rob Preece's book further on an introduction to Tantra. Of course, my own Guru Zaza Rinpoche wrote a book, Mahamudra and the Gelug Tradition, which is absolutely amazing. Sort of our standard text that we're using. Alexander Berson's got the very, very classic book that he edited by His Holiness Dalai Lama's teachings on First Panchen Lama's text, which I think is called the Kagyu Gelug Tradition of Mahamudra. So it's sort of famous one from the early 80s. Very, very, very good. I think that's even free online. Geshe Rabin's book, Echoes of Voidness, which is great. And most of all, any sort of treatment from, at least in Gelugpa tradition, from the First Panchen Lama's root text. So I even like Geshe Michael Roach's, he had a sort of Asian Classics Institute course on Mahamudra. It's very, very, very good. So there's so much, and of course, let alone just see countless books, amazing books on Mahamudra, let's say in the Kagyu tradition that you can read. So many. And the Gelug tradition, a lot of we've got sort of our visionary lineage, right, from Buddha Manjushri there. But also we have the influence of the Karma and Drikan Kagyu in particular lineages of Mahamudra. So there's countless books by the different Karmapas and excellent commentaries from other famous Kagyu Lamas as well, especially more and more now. And yeah, so I would just especially if you're a Kagyu practitioner, you have your hands full of many, many books to read there and stuff. So anyway, those are sort of so if you want to go a little bit deeper, those are sources that you can look into. But just looking at the notes from this chapter on Mahamudra, and again, the name of the chapter here is Liberation in Clarity, Chapter 10. That's a beautiful title to sort of go by there. So Rob Preece starts with one little discussion here where he says there's generally two paths of transformation that we have in the Dharma and Tantra in particular. One, paths relating to complexities of clarity, appearance, and relativity, and the second one being paths of clarity, simplicity, and emptiness or formlessness. So first one we can look at the one complexities of clarity and appearance have to do with what we've talked about before in previous classes, the level of relative truth or conventional truth. And the second one, path of clarity, simplicity, formlessness being sort of the path of emptiness or ultimate truth. And of course, these two truths go together, that without relativity, you don't get emptiness. Emptiness guarantees relativity. So when we look at one of the best analogies for relative truth or conventional truth is that of dependent origination. For anything to be, it depends on all factors that are not it. So there's a sense of interbeing, or things are in a system of relationships. It's because those things are all related and relative to one another that they cannot be sort of inherently resisting or standing outside of a relationship, and that would be their ultimate truth. So ultimate truth and conventional truth go together here, as we've discussed before. So, so we generally say that these sort of the path of relativity or conventional truth is the one of skillful means or method, and then the path of ultimate truth or emptiness being the path of wisdom. So we can focus on the different dimensions of each of these two paths, but we can't separate them. And Tantra in particular is a practice or a path that works on the unity of these two truths. It unifies these two ways of proceeding. So Rupakaya, or sort of the form body of the Buddhas, is of course all these sort of path practice on the conventional level or relative level, and the Dharmakaya, or the omniscient wisdom body of the Buddhas, wisdom mind of the Buddhas. This is accomplished by the practices of ultimate truth or emptiness here. So Rob Preece says that the transformation of form, relatively, there's sort of two ways of practicing that. So on the relative level, even in terms of our tantric practice, transformation through form, we can look at peaceful healing visualizations for cleansing and purifying being one. And this sort of looks at sort of unblocking energies of the psyche this way, more sort of a peaceful way, purifying way, cleansing way. And then the second one would be the path that deals directly with the archetypal forces of the unconsciousness. So oftentimes transformation through wrathful sort of or intense means. And this, he says, is, in particular, highest yoga tantra works more along that line, where energy needs a vehicle and the catalyst or channel for transformation, working with these sort of more wrathful or intense archetypes or images or symbols. So he says that in the first one, the peaceful one is more sort of the path of Kriya Tantra, and in the second one being sort of the more wrathful way would be sort of Anuttara Yoga. And of course, that's not a hard and fast distinction, because there are wrathful deities within the Kriya Tantra level, for instance, Vajrapani, Vajrachala, and so forth. And there are peaceful deities working more on the Anuttara yoga level, highest yoga tantra level practice as well. Not as many, for instance, but there is one example would be highest yoga tantra version of green Tara in the Gelu tradition called Chittamani Tara or Mind Jewel Tara, for instance. Okay. So both these two ways depend upon your insight into emptiness. Otherwise, deity yoga would be a dualistic misunderstanding. We gain this insight through practice and develop awareness of clarity and insight. Hence, we need a practice of Mahamudra or meditating on the emptiness of the mind. So obviously, Tantra, as we've spoken about before, depends upon an understanding of emptiness. If we didn't have sort of a practice of emptiness, then we have these dualistic things. And really, I would argue, sort of a path that would lead you into a lot of, at the very least, conceptual problems, and the most all sorts of psychological, emotional, and psychic issues, where you would have yourself trying to be the deity, but nevertheless preserving your ego through that process. So it would be me, Matthew Richards, trying to be, let's say, Green Tar or something like that. And I would argue that it would produce a kind of mental illness at the end of the day for that. It wouldn't transform you in any real personal, spiritual way, wouldn't sort of be the medicine against suffering of samsara, but would rather, I think, just heighten and intensify a lot of your neuroses and even pathologies in that regard. And our dear friend and teacher David Gonzalez said that he heard somewhere His Holiness Dalai Lama saying that he found ran into a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but certain Western practitioners, because they hadn't been really studying emptiness or so, were practicing that way. They would say, oh, I'm Tara, or I'm Vajrayani, or I'm Vajrakalai, Matthew Richards, me, little old me in Canada, I'm this great deity. So they're preserving their sort of deluded samsaric ego and then putting on like a costume of a deity. And then His Holiness said these people were very, very mentally ill. So there you go. That's sort of the that's the warning. So the importance of needing for this to function at all, let alone function the way it's supposed to function as Tantra, depends upon an understanding of emptiness. So this practice of Mahamudra focuses on the innate clarity and emptiness of the mind as the causal ground of all phenomena. Mahamudra develops the quality of awareness that goes beyond limitations and complexities of appearances. This is important then because we are not caught up in tantric form as if it was an absolute truth. And again, you wouldn't have this dualistic understanding of yourself or the deity. So of course, if you're meditating on the emptiness of the mind, the emptiness of everything, everything becomes flexible, everything is possible karmically, and we don't get these hang-ups. So Rob Preece says it's also important because the energy of instincts and emotion then is liberating the empty openness and clarity of the mind. Okay? Without first developing this clarity, no deity practice in Tantra is beneficial. We meditate on the mind's innate clarity, and this enables us to relate to our own experiences from a new perspective, especially our emotional lives. We can name our emotional patterns and have a greater freedom to make choices and not get caught up in the power of these emotional patterns. To be fully liberated from them requires an important level of awareness that addresses their underlying nature. And we start with cultivating bare awareness. So, of course, as we've seen through our previous classes on Mahamudra, or again, if you have any of these training in Mahamudra, any books that you've read or so forth, that's what we're cultivating, is we're using a mindful awareness to meditate on the mind itself. So in the four mindfulnesses that you usually get in all these sort of Vipassana training, let's say in the Theravada tradition, or even just within our own Mahayana traditions, we talk about mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of the mind, and mindfulness of phenomena or objects of the mind. And so with Mahamudra, we're talking about mindfulness of the mind itself. And so we cultivate that bare awareness. We were just meditating basically on our experience, what our mind is seeing or experiencing. And we're doing this without judgment. We're just allowing our mind to be naturally. And whatever arises, we just acknowledge, we experience it, and then we let it go. So we don't repress contents of mind we don't like, and we don't try and sort of indulge or even advocate for the experiences or thoughts or sensations or feelings that we enjoy or like or agree with. So we're just sort of this bare awareness and just allow everything to come and go on its own. And so this is like our first teacher, my first teacher, again, Kelsey Karchin, called this sort of be the silent watcher, so to speak. So again, there's so many different dimensions to this meditation, and again, you can study it more in depth and detail. But what Rob Preece says is that when we're cultivating this bare awareness, this immediately has an important effect on our emotional lives and all of our emotional issues and dramas and emotional patterns and emotional reactions and responses. So if we're practicing Tantra, and the more we do Tantra, a lot of these emotional and psychic energies are getting hyped up or released as we're releasing traumas or sufferings or so forth. Mahamudra allows us to have sort of a safe container for all of this to happen, where again, we're not going to sort of repress the stuff we don't like that we can't handle it, and we're not going to enjoy or sort of pump up or indulge all the stuff that we do like and sort of become a dangerous person that way to ourselves and other people. This is sort of like a safe, sort of transparent, purified container, sort of as a stage for our practice here. So he says that our vitality is caught up in emotional patterns, caught up in unproductive, limiting, and often destructive patterns. And we are dominated by these. If we can crack these patterns, we have a new potential for growth and creativity. Our unconscious mind, or our shadow, is sort of a rich manure to grow things. Our awakened potential energies, the energies of our psyche, then can flow freely and creatively. Western therapeutic models now really see the importance of mindfulness, the importance of staying with their feelings and emotions with awareness to heal them. And more Western modalities, as we know, are starting to see the importance of bare awareness training, or vipassana, to work as a form of therapy. A quiet, intrusive, impartial attention that doesn't interfere with whatever arises and passes through our awareness. So we get a safe proximity to strong emotions, and we don't drown in the power of our emotional distress. And so, as we know, this book, of course, is at least the original book. When this edition here is from 2006, but the older edition, the UK one, was called Alchemical Buddhists from the 1990s, of course, but this book's 20 years old now. It's amazing. And a lot's happened in Western therapy in the last 20 years, but of course, the mindfulness meditation everybody does now, and even Mahamudra and these kinds of formless meditations, or meditations of the mind, are very, very popular now therapeutically. So we're seeing that it gives us sort of a space, as I'd mentioned before in therapeutic Qigong, when you have a lot of emotional patterns, sufferings, trauma, and so forth, it takes a lot of energy in your nervous system, in your vital energies or qi, to hide these things for ourselves or manage these things for ourselves because they're too painful or too upsetting to us. So we have to hide them and put them under lock and key, store them away some way, or manage them somehow. So what happens is when we have a Mahamudra mind and allow these things to come out in a natural way, what our teacher, particularly my wife Christina Sanchez, studied with him, Jill Marin, a very, very famous Qigong teacher who studied with our teacher, Dorothy Raminer-Cadro. She talked about Jill Marin all the time. He's got a great book on 5 elements and 6 conditions for healing, and a book on Qigong Song I'd really recommend. But he mentioned this a lot, that there's just so much energy that we have to just basically almost cut ourselves off from ourselves or desensitize ourselves or hide things from ourselves, all these emotional charges that are too awful or painful to deal with, and traumas and so forth, that we need a wholesome system to allow us to sort of move these things or digest these things, move these things through us. So what he was saying, when I went and did a course with him years ago at the University of British Columbia, maybe 20 years ago or something, 15, 20 years ago, but he said, in a healthy way of healing, we outgrow things. So things, basically, it's almost like in biology, we call an emergent system, where sort of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. We sort of grow, and then in this new stage of development, the previous stage we were at no longer makes sense or is relevant to us. So in other words, the butterfly looks back at the cocoon or the worm and goes, wow, I can't believe I came from that. Like, I did come from that, but I'm no longer that. I don't even know what it would be like. I'm a butterfly flying around. What it would be like to be a little caterpillar crawling all up the tree? Kind of doesn't even make sense to me. So when we outgrow things, it's the same kind of thing. As we can see, we outgrow things all the time. Let's say you're into golf for years, all of a sudden you no longer play golf. You look at a golf course or clubs and go, oh yeah, well, I did that 10 years ago. I can't even think. Or different kinds of fashions. You can look back at old pictures of yourself, things that you're into, music or fashions, or food that you might have eaten growing up, and you can't even relate to that anymore. Like I grew up sort of, I hate to say, more like white trash or whatever, but in the 1970s and 80s, and I just ate canned food all the time, Chef Boyardee, all the sort of crappy food, and My Asian friends all make fun of me for that. But of course, when I'm over, let's say in Asia flying, I'm in whatever, Singapore, Japan, eating all this fancy food, I think, wow, this is amazing. The 10-year-old Matthew Richards didn't even, this kind of food was unimaginable to him. And he was just eating, my favorite thing as a kid was canned macaroni and cheese, Franco-American brand from the United States. In North Delta in Vancouver in the 1970s, that was just like a delicacy for me. But I think of that now, and I just think, how could I have eaten cold macaroni and cheese out of a can? It's unthinkable for me to eat that kind of food. But I did. So it's the same thing with outgrowing our negative patterns. Like, oh, wow, I was a really angry person years ago. I was a really anxious person. I was a really depressed person. I was a really sort of overstimulated person. Let's say you outgrow that. When you're at a new place in your life where you're more healed and you look back and go, who is that person? I can't believe I was that person. You see an old like video of you or something from, oh my, I did that. I was like that. So that's a healthy way of doing it. So Mahamudra, where I'm going with this bare awareness, this sort of silent watcher that allows sort of impartially or sort of with a loving, forgiving mind, allows things to be what they are and to move away on their own time organically, to he organically move. This is a safe way for you to deal with all these energies of healing, even on the tantric path. It really allows you to, again, grow and to transform in the most organic, healthy, and safe way possible here. So we talk about what Rob Preece here is a subtle presence here. So my notes here, yeah. So the more we practice them, we're more aware of this underlying process on a subtle level, and we can see a broader field of feeling. So we get more Mahamudra we do, the more subtle we get, where we can sort of, like I sort of joke on Joe DeLuz, one of my favorite philosophers, called that the transcendental field. Like underneath your regular sense of self, you see this almost impersonal plane of virtual energies, feelings and emotions and symbols and this kind of stuff. The whole sort of world of all these different, sort of like a whole field of all different energies and intensities and stuff like that. The more Mahamudra you get, the more subtle you get with your own mind, seeing all the different responses and reactions and feelings and sensations and thoughts and symbols and archetypes, all sort of working in this vast, at a lot of ways, we get it almost like a pre-personal, sometimes even almost feeling like an anonymous level here. And we get more in touch with the felt sense of embodiment, where we have even a bigger sense of what our body is. Like French philosopher Merleau-Ponty in the last part of his life in his book, Visible and the Invisible, talked about, wild being, wild, like raw embodiment, where the more in touch with your body you get, you see that your body's part of all this wider sense of embodiment. Like I feel more in touch with the natural world, that I'm sort of, my vision is part of the visible, all visible things. And that he says, like, it's the chiasm and reversibility, you can look at his philosophy. But he said, like, when I look at things, there's also the sense that things that I'm looking at are made to be looked at. And also there's a sense of, by them being seen by me, it's relativizing my position as an observer. And so they're looking at me. I'm looking at them, they're looking at me. I look to the top of the mountain and see what it would be like to look down from the top, how I can get there with the hike, but also the natural world seeing me as a place with it. So I'm being looked at, the mountain's looking at me. So it's very kind of cool that way. And there's a quote that he has in there. I think it might be in his master work, that essay called I and Mind, Learning L'Esprit, which I would really, maybe about 30 pages or so, really recommend people read that. Maurice Merleau-Ponty, I and Mind, where he quotes Paul Klee. And Paul Klee, the famous German painter, said that when you become a painter, it's not that you're looking at the world painting it, you see how the world's looking at you, like making you an artist, right? So you get into a wider sense of what embodiment means here, right? The feeling ground with the body in which the strong, more focused feelings become manifest. So we can liberate this energy before it becomes strong and focused emotion. We get more into the unconscious in the Jungian way. Now, Jung says we can't use consciousness to cross into the unconscious with meditation or any of these things, because we always needed ego to do that, at least in terms of very sort of Western understanding of this. Whereas Buddhism says that we don't need this big ego to do this work. If anything, the more Mahamudra we do, the more it goes underneath the ego. We see how the ego is created by all these more sort of unconscious processes here. And we can have an awareness without an ego focus. That's what we call non-positional consciousness here. So that's kind of interesting. And of course, with Mahamudra, just like they say in Dzogchen, allow thoughts to liberate themselves. In other words, the more we have this bare awareness, we just see that feelings, thoughts, sensations arise and pass, on their own. If we just allow them to be what they are, with, like in Dzogchen, they say contemplation, or with this bare sort of natural mind, like they say in Mahamudra, right? Wonders of the natural mind, so to speak. Things can just show themselves what they are and then go away, which is even what phenomena means in Greek, right? Which means step into the light. Something is stepping into the light to show itself what it is, right? To show us what it is. So things just show themselves and move away if we let them. The whole point is not to cling or grasp, right? So we get more into the subtle awareness and sense perception. Our focus becomes more subtle, at the same time more open and spacious. This helps us remain with the underlying energy and gives rise to emotions in a different way. So rather than transcending, avoiding, or rising above, or disengaging with them, here we cultivate a present clear awareness, the underlying process of all rising into consciousness. So this, again, like I'd mentioned, rather than sort of trying to sort of physically, like in your mind, psychically change things, allow things to change or transform or purify on their own through this bare awareness. So feelings, bodily sensations, sensory experiences, and thoughts and images. And also, he says we have a subtle habit of contracting or constricting around pain or pleasure, which keeps us in samsara. We cling and tighten on a very subtle level. So already we're in an emotional reaction when something arises to awareness. And we end up becoming conditioned or dominated by these things. There is a disposition to grasp and tighten around things which create samsara. Now, if we're able to stay clear, present, and unclinging, our experience changes on this subtle level. We remain open and free of discriminating judgments that make us constrict. We can allow natural unfolding of feelings and emotions and move through this and allow it to free itself. This changes our idea of the unconscious. The unconscious no longer this sort of dark shadow place of scary permanent things sort of stuck there, monsters stuck in the basement, that are under the bed as a little kid that are sort of tormenting us or scaring us. Rather, we can see these things in the unconscious as deep, sort of almost pre-personal habitual responses and constrictions and tightenings and judgments. And if that's the case, then they can be different. We can untie them or loosen them up, that they release themselves. And with this, so we untie and free them, we can heal past traumas. We can now then go deeper and deeper as the ego softens, as awareness opens and becomes spacious, and now eventually sort of lose the separateness of duality of subject and object, and we can overcome dualism itself. That's sort of in the higher processes of Mahamudra, Tantric Mahamudra. That's the whole point, is that we start to see, even sort of like using Deleuzean terms or even Sartrean terms, on this level of bare, like ultimate bare awareness and natural mind, even subject and object start to dissolve back into that. They're not these separate things, you against the world, my big ego against this or that, or attracted to this and that. It's all part of this one flow or process, right? That the process gives rise to these things like subjects and objects. So it's very Chittamanchan or mind-only school in a lot of ways. We can talk about that. The Madhyamika thing would show how that they're all equal and that they're all just labeled or designated by the mind conceptually or with language, right? That would be sort of the Madhyamika take for that. So, but notice, I like this, how, a lot of things we create a whole, Trungpa talks about this, the ego is sort of a defense mechanism. Or we could talk, this even comes out of Freudian terms of, what the ego is sort of like this constriction of defenses around things that are too painful or things that are too pleasurable, for instance, right? So Mahamudra is this idea of relaxing, becoming sort of releasing the natural state. And the great Dzogchen Nyingma master, right, Namkhen Rinpoche, always has that great quote. I quote him indefinitely all the time, which is, where there is tension, there is suffering. Where there is tension, there is suffering. So to do Dzogchen, to do Mahamudra, first of all, you have to relax and be in the present moment and relaxed and natural. Then you start to see just how much the ego is basically all these sort of very subtle judgments and reactions of constriction and grasping. So even on this most subtle level of grasping at inherent existence, of sort of trying to stop things in the flow or in the river, grabbing onto water in the river. Kandro Rinpoche, our teacher, said that the sort of instinctual thing when you're drowning in the ocean, is to try and grab onto the water, almost to climb out of it. But you can't grab water. But our mind's doing that with existence and with itself. So it's releasing and opening and relaxing on this very, very subtle level is what we have to do. So bare awareness and subtle presence that stays with an underlying feeling ground. So the separation between awareness and feeling fall away. All emotions arise as an expression of clear awareness, or Mahamudra, a clear non-dual presence. We stay in this presence of clarity, and it's possible to experience emotions in a natural condition without dualism. We can just like the objects of our mind that we see with Mahamudra, again, we can see them how they are as they untie and move away on their own. So it's a completely different, we respond and not react, as they say with therapy, right? Rather than reacting and have like being sort of a slave to our own experience, our own feelings and dispositions and so forth. With this bare awareness and spaciousness and relaxation, we can experience even ourselves in a completely different way here. In this space, the spaciousness, emptiness of clarity, emotions arise and are released into their own nature, which is empty of inherent existence. We are liberated in clarity. So Mahamudra, the ocean of the mind, is not disturbed by its waves, just clarity and relaxation. So again, if you're like when I was a kid, go to the bottom of the lake in Northern Ontario and lie at the bottom and look up and see all the waves. We do that in storms, winds and even thunder. You could see everything, but you're in this peaceful sort of state, sort of this clarity and relaxation and openness at the bottom of the lake, and not infected by the waves and the big storm at the top. However, the waves and the ocean are one thing, right? So they're not somehow separate. And it's being able to sort of take the whole thing as one. In the end of the chapter, Rob Preece talks about the relationship of Mahamudra and Chi, or again, prana, or energy winds, Lung. So when we remain with a non-dual presence with emotions and feelings as they arise, their nature starts to change as the energy winds upon which them ride are released. The Chi, or prana there, moves and balances by maintaining subtle awareness that doesn't tighten around pain or distress in the body. We can then release emotional traumas, etc. So this is the whole thing, what we see by Tantra, particularly in higher Tantra. It's a big teaching like of Lungta, or wind horse. Again, mind and prana are the same thing. Rinpoche, my Lama, always quotes Sakya Pandita, the great Sakya Lama and scholar, who always said samsara is when we separate prana or chi and mind. When we separate those things dualistically, we are caught in a cycle of samsaric suffering. Seeing them together, seeing that energy and mind are the same thing, mind and energy or manifestation are the same thing. This is the tantric understanding that allows us to go into nirvana or full enlightenment, right? So either we're just energetically deploying the samsaric mandala of our particular ego with all suffering, or deploy the enlightened pure mandala of the deity, right? So you'll see the more, again, where my mind goes, prana goes. Where prana goes, my mind goes. So the more Mahamudra I do, the more relaxed I get, my chi in my body, the prana starts to settle. So rather than running the bathtub and stirring it all up, turn the water off, leave it, all the water settles. You have a glass of muddy water and stir it up, then put it on the counter, come back in an hour, everything's separated. The dirt's at the bottom, clear water at the top. We have to do this with our own prana. And so much of us, speaking for myself, especially when I'm flying, my prana is all mixed up from the jet lag and everything. It's very hard to settle, to sleep, or to meditate, or any of these things. We have to work our prana that we have a subtle mind, and clear mind, and relaxed mind. But on the other hand, if we meditate and have a clear, relaxed mind, our prana becomes more relaxed. And again, just like having that space that allow thoughts, emotions, feelings to release themselves as they are, pranically, when we're all stirred up or tight or angry, like this, when we allow things to relax, it's like having our hands in these tight fists. They can open up and release. So energetically, when our prana gets settled, a lot of these emotional knots and tightness can release as well. And again, that's what therapeutic qigong goes with. When we do, I start with my teacher, Gadro. When you're doing Qi Nat Sang, like let's say together you're working on somebody and we're both meditating, and you put your hand and you're putting Qi, let's say in their large intestine. A lot of times, so there's a lot of depression and sort of blocked Qi that place. And both of you say, okay, both of us put our mind here, let's say on our cecum, where the small intestine joins the large intestine. There's a lot of times emotional blockages there. And let's both breathe. In particular, person getting the treatment, the patient is breathing. Both put our minds there. And again, you focus, but have this sort of clear awareness in the present moment, and you feel and breathe. So what's interesting is, again, Mahamudra, that sort of bare awareness. We're not being distracted. We're just focusing, being in present moment with that spot. And again, directing the Qi there. And then all the blockages start to release. You breathe them out. The mind and the prana itself allow this, again, all these emotions and thoughts that are stuck there, as well as the prana with them that's all stuck in a knot, starts to release on its own and get, quote unquote, digested, moved through the body, or outgrown or released. So what Tantra is, we'll see that the more we practice Tantra, this is the process. By doing Data Yoga, which is a form we call of Tantric Mahamudra, and doing the mantras, which are working with prana. So the meditations, form meditations of visualization, beautiful, peaceful things, having done on the background of Mahamudra while we're doing it, allowing things to rise and fall on their own dependent arisings in the mind, which is sort of, we can't find them out there and can't find them in the mind. We look them so they're all empty. And at the same time, working with dharanis and mantras is what purifies the prana directly. So that's the power of the Tantric Mahamudra of Tantra. And this is what purifies and liberates the mind. So there we go. And again, that's not very much. There's so much more in this chapter on Mahamudra. I highly recommend it. And again, any book on Mahamudra, there's so much out there. A few of them, like I said, from our tradition, Glupa tradition, but lots of them in the Kagyu tradition. Now, there's a really good one that Rinpoche always used called Clarifying the Natural State by Dakpo Tashi Namgyal, very famous Kagyu Lama, maybe from the 1500s or something. Very practical, good manual. And again, Zaza Rinpoche, my precious guru's book, Mahamudra in the Gaelic tradition, that one, having a plug for that one on Amazon, that's a very, very good book to study as well. And again, Mahamudra is something you can start anytime and do absolutely anywhere, at home formally or informally, just when you're walking the dog, lining up for your coffee, whatever, on your way to work on the subway and so forth. And this is sort of the basis. We need Mahamudra, the Sutric Mahamudra, to be the basis for our tantric or advanced tantric meditations, Tantric Mahamudra for the work. It's like the unity in Gelupa tradition, we say, between karma and emptiness, between Sutra and Tantra, between Sutric Mahamudra and Tantric Mahamudra. They come together to give us a direct experience of the emptiness of the mind, which liberates us from samsara. So dedication by the blessings of all holy beings and all of our gurus, the truth of karma, and the power of pure spirit intention, and all of our dharma wishes be fulfilled. Okay, thank you, and see you next time.